guys, it's Rachel, and today I will be walking you through the process of making my own homemade bread for the very first time. So today I'll be using this cookbook or recipe book by Ken Forkish. It's pretty popular, you may have heard of it, but it's called Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast. So basically it's a guide on how to make your own bread. It starts from the basics, kind of your basic Saturday white loaf of bread, and levels up as you get further into the book. So I'm only at the beginning of this book, but I thought I would try out their basic Saturday white loaf of bread and see how I do. And to preface this, I have never really made bread before, so this will be my first time. I have worked with yeast, I have made buns, as you've obviously seen on this channel, but I have never made kind of a hard crust traditional loaf of bread. But I am a big lover of bread, so I'm super excited to get into this. Without further ado, let's dive in and let me walk you through the process of how I made my very first loaf of bread. For my very first loaf, we are starting out with the Saturday white bread. It's called a Saturday white bread because you can make this whole entire loaf, or 2 loaves of this, in actually one day or one Saturday, if you have the time. I was surprised by how simple it was. It really requires only a few ingredients from flour, yeast, salt, and hot water. That's literally it. You don't need anything else to make a good, tasty bread. To be fair, there are a couple other things like maybe a banneton or even a Dutch oven just to kind of bake things off, but those are more like utensils and tools, which I think of as investments. So according to this recipe, it takes about 5 hours to produce this bread, but I would add on a few more hours because you have to prep the dough, bake it, let it cool down, etc. It is a full day affair, I won't lie. But like I said, it is as simple as it seems. You literally kick it off by just combining your flour and hot water, mixing it together, and then letting it rest for a bit. Afterwards, you'll just go ahead and sprinkle on your salt and yeast on top of your dough after it's rested, and then you'll use a unique folding method, which they kind of detail in the book itself, but essentially you're picking up quadrants or small portions of dough and folding it over itself, and repeating that process over and over until you cover the entire dough and the yeast and salt is fully embedded within it. So it took me a few tries to get this method right. I was looking at the pictures and the diagrams, which I'll show you here. So for mixing the dough, you kind of follow this guide that they have here. It's a little bit confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's super easy, and you'll kind of repeat this process pretty often throughout the folding of the dough. And then once you've folded your dough, you'll use the pincer method, which was a little bit tricky for me. I think what was really helpful was being able to dip my hand in some warm water and then just kind of use that as a way to separate my fingers from the dough because it was so sticky. So the pincer method is really just straight up pinching your dough. Like, that is the best way I can explain it. You literally pinch your dough into chunks and then fold it over itself, combine it into a ball again, and then pinch. Literally, this is the best way to mix all of your ingredients together by hand. So once you've done the pincer method, you'll go ahead and fold your dough one more time, and then let it rest for about an hour, and then fold it again. You'll fold it again the second time after an hour because it kind of loosens up after a while and it spreads out a bit more. So you'll just want to do it about an hour later. Then comes the fun part where you wait literally for 5 hours and you just let the dough rest on its own, and it should triple in size. So when I took my bad boy of yeasted dough out after 5 hours, it was this humongous ball of dough and it was bursting at the seams. So now comes the part where you'll divide your dough into 2 equal pieces. Pretty simple, just dump your massive dough out onto a floured surface and then cover the top with a little bit of flour as well and divide that in half. As you'll see, it started getting a little bit dark while I was filming this part because it was in the evening, so the lighting kind of changed up a bit. Not as aesthetic, I know, sorry guys. And once you've got your dough divided into 2 equal pieces, by the way, this recipe makes 2 pretty big loaves, like you will definitely be set for the next 2 weeks at least. Go ahead and move on to the shaping process of the dough. So the shaping process also took me a little bit of time to kind of process and figure out what it is that the directions were saying in the recipe. But essentially in the shaping process, what you'll want to do is take those 2 separate loaves, fold them over each other again, kind of like the original folding process. Once you've got kind of a tight ball with all the seams tucked underneath, you'll use your pinkies and your fingers to kind of roll the ball along the surface of a non-floured surface so it kind of sticks, and it'll just kind of slide against that surface, but kind of come together into a tighter ball. And that's what you really want, that tight, clean ball. So I didn't have this before, but my boyfriend recently gifted me a whole bread making set. And what it came with was 2 bannetons, which I think is actually really helpful if you are going to be making bread. It just makes the shaping process easier, and it makes it look a little bit more official and formal, to be 100% honest. It looks like I know what I'm doing, like I actually know how to make bread, even though I don't. So taking your lightly dusted banneton bins or baskets, you'll put the dough in there and you'll place it seam side down. So the beautiful round part should be facing upwards. This is so that when you invert the dough later, you'll get the nice kind of crust and ridges when you bake it off in the Dutch oven. Now that you've got your bread divided and placed into your banneton baskets, you'll let them sit for about an hour and 10 minutes, let them proof and rise a bit more. For one of my loaves, I decided I wanted to bake it off the next day, so I put it directly in the fridge in the basket itself. I covered it up with some saran wrap and I baked it off first thing the next morning. So once the dough has risen, at least for an hour, go ahead and pop it into your Dutch oven. So your Dutch oven you'll want to have preheated at 375 degrees for about 45 minutes in advance. Then using a sheet of parchment paper, I found this to be the easiest way not to burn myself because it's a super hot Dutch oven. I went ahead and placed my bread into the Dutch oven, covered it with the lid, and baked it off for about 30 minutes. And then I uncovered the bread so I could see the beautiful crust, and I let it sit for an additional 20 to 30 minutes. I actually think I let it run a little bit longer than 30 minutes because I really love that golden crust exterior that's very crunchy. Then, yada yada, you're supposed to let it sit for an hour to cool down, but you know, nobody ever does that when it comes to baked goods because I can't wait. I want fresh, warm bread. And that is exactly what I did. I dug into it while it's warm. You could literally see the steam kind of emerging from the loaf itself. I was so proud of how it smelled, how it tasted, how it looked. I slathered on some butter, and honestly, it was a good time. I broke out my bougie butter, which is what I consider my Kerrygold butter, and I had a fantastic time enjoying this bread. So ultimately, would I recommend the recipe from flour, water, salt, and yeast? Definitely. This is super easy for someone who's interested in getting started in bread and wants to kind of try an entry-level bread recipe to dip your feet in the water. How did the bread taste? I would say that it tasted kind of like a baguette, but big and round and fluffy with a nice crusty exterior. And in fact, I have half the loaf here because this is all that's left. I've eaten the rest with my family and some Kerrygold butter, obviously, but just smelling it, it still tastes incredibly fresh. This is the day after, and just looking at this beautiful exterior, I'm just so proud of how it turned out. As you can see, the interior is very lofty, has a really nice tight crumb, but it's not too tight or dense. It's still really airy and fluffy. So I am super proud of the bread that I made, and I just want to say thank you, Ken Forkish, for making bread accessible. You don't really need that many fancy gadgets to do this, and if you are interested in making your own bread, I would definitely recommend it. It's not as difficult as it seems. The ingredients are super simple, and with a little bit of practice, I think I could get pretty advanced with this bread making, maybe try out new flavors, try out new additions, and see how it goes from there. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, let me know if you would like me to try out a different bread recipe, go through another walkthrough of a Ken Forkish recipe. I'm definitely going to be trying out new recipes from his cookbook, so let me know what you're interested in next. Now I am off to enjoy the rest of this loaf.